Welcome back, everybody. We are going to continue with our virtualization, continue with our Server Plus study. So, virtual servers. Excuse me. A little bit more situated. There we go. Virtual servers run as guests on a host computer, but they are still configured with virtual hardware. Okay, so oops. There we go. Virtual servers run as guests on a host. Crunchy, will you chill? It's okay, you can play. They're still configured with virtual hardware. What's that mean? Well, it means, like, you know, if your host has X amount of storage space, then, you know, you're constrained with, you know, the virtual version of how much storage space of that you're going to virtualize and use, and RAM and other resources. Some hypervisors allow virtual guests to access physical hardware components. Okay, that sounds important. Yes. Physical hardware components. Correct. Components. Directly. Okay. Whereas others emulate hardware for the guest. Okay. Others emulate hardware for the guest. That sounds important. How many virtual CPUs a virtual machine is configured with? Each vCPU maps to a CPU core and not a physical CPU chip. So we could say each vCPU maps to a CPU core. And not a physical CPU chip. Well, that sounds important. Okay, so let's make a page 2 of this. Let's duplicate this and come down here, and we'll continue our notes. Physical multiprocessor system enables each virtual machine to be configured with multiple CPUs, but more vCPUs doesn't necessarily mean better performance. That's basically what we're saying. More CPUs can bog down the host. multiple vCPUs can require multiple software licenses. Let me read that right here. Software vendors like their server-based products based on a number of physical or logical processors. So talk to your software vendor. So that's like saying, if I had an Ubuntu computer and I was using, if I had like an Ubuntu desktop and I was using it for to host VMware or some kind of virtual machine software, and on that I was running 8 Windows computers, because before we've done that in other videos, we've set up virtual machine software and we've loaded Pop! OS and Kali and other operating systems. And so if we were to load up 8 virtual Windows machines, we would need 8 Windows licenses. That's what's that's saying, you know. So if we need, you know, we would need 8 Windows product keys. So that's what it's telling us. And then it says, ideally, you'll have an automated way to periodically inventory both hardware and software in use on servers. Okay, that's important to think about. Hopefully automated. Okay. This is especially useful in a data center. Nice. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is environmental factors. Okay. What do we care about environmental factors? Adding virtual servers to a hypervisor host doesn't make as much of a difference to power consumption. Okay. But it does, as heat does to physically adding server hardware to a server room or a data center. Arrangement of equipment, optimal airflow, ensuring adequate temperature, humidity control. Okay, so, but it says adding virtual servers to a hypervisor doesn't make as much difference to power consumption. But power consumption is a thing. In fact, let us X that and bring that back up here. Now let's continue this on a new page. So power consumption's a thing, right? So we're not going to rule it out, but it says it's less of a thing. It's not quite as important as heat from adding physical hardware. To a server room. Okay. And so a lot of you people out there, if you've been reading a lot, you've been seeing a lot on TikTok and things like that in the media about data centers. Yeah, this is what they're doing. They're running servers. This is where your resources are going. You know, cooling water because of all the heat that these things generate. We're going to go in a deeper layer later on. Because in these places there are ways to arrange the equipment and make rows and like hot rows and cold rows. We're going to learn about, you know, where to put the air conditioning and the ventilation and all that stuff. Arrange arrangement of equipment, optimal airflow, ensuring adequate temperature. Can't spell today. Damn it. Finally. Ensuring adequate temperature, humidity control. Humidity control is going to be a thing. Okay. Excuse me. So let us move on to our next page. Let's see how we're doing on time here. Okay. Highlight all this jazz. Heat and airflow. Okay. Dozens of physical servers into a tiny closet. Excessive heat. Sufficient heating, HVAC, for your hardware. That's what we care about. The more you have, the greater power. The more equipment, the greater power draw, which means more heat is generated, more cooling is required. Blade enclosures and server virtualization reduce power consumption and heat. So let's go ahead and start making some notes here. Dozens of physical servers into a tiny closet. Let's go back and let's say, imagine. What the frickety doodah? Damn it. Fiddlesticks. X. There. Imagine dozens of physical servers in a tiny closet. Okay. Think about it. Think about it. Okay. Adding more hardware adds more heat. No, we just talked about that. I'm sorry. Yeah, excessive heat. Let's leave that. Crunchy, what are you doing? Okay, back up here, down here. Sufficient heating, okay. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Did I spell that right? HVAC. Okay, talk about for the hardware. Okay, more equipment. Means more power draw. There we go. And more cooling is required. Okay. Blade enclosures and server virtualizations. Blade enclosures and server virtualization are two ways to reduce power consumption and heat. And why is that? Because when we virtualize things, you know, if we need 10 computers, we can build all 10 computers on one computer and one piece of hardware and run all 10 computers. I mean, just theoretically, right? If we had enough resources. More likely, if we needed 10 computers, we'd probably run it on like 3 different computers instead, you know, and set them up with redundancies and all of that. But we don't need 10 full computers. If we were running 10 full computers, that would take up a lot of resources. When you're working with a lot of equipment, it's important to ensure that air is fed into the devices, that the warmer air is exhausted and properly. So let's make another page. Let's make another page. There we go. Duplicate the slide. Okay. So cool air is fed into the devices. Okay, warm air. Warm air is exhausted. We want to make sure that we have that kind of a process going on. Okay, to keep the room cool. Data centers normally send cool air from the floor up to the rack components, arranging the racks of the equipment in rows. You have hot and cold aisles. Hot and cold aisles. CPUs generate a lot of heat the faster they run. Heat sinks are placed over the CPU. So, oops. Heat sinks on CPUs. To dissipate heat from the chip. This can be accelerated with a fan stuck to a chip. Or a fan stuck, okay. Fans. Liquid cooling is another server cooling option. Okay, do we need to know anything about that right now? Cool water brought in. So it's just a heat exchanger. Okay. All right. Let's get on to our next slide here. Static charges. Why on earth do we care about static charges? Well, electrostatic discharge and fire suppression. Often overlooked aspect of environmental control includes electrostatic discharge, ESD, and fire suppression. Okay, those seem to be important. Large server rooms are designated with these things in mind. Smaller environments might simply convert the janitor's closet into a server wiring closet. ESD is a frenzied rush of electrons between differently charged objects. This is bad news because it can damage. Okay, yeah. There are ways to reduce the possibility of ESD, but basically taking steps to ensure that objects come in contact with each other are equally charged. Yeah, we know that. Excuse me. Oops. Fire suppression. Okay. In the event of an electrical fire, you do not use water as a fire suppressant. Okay. Server and data room centers call for special construction and fire suppression mechanisms. Call for special and fire suppression mechanisms. To flames and minimize equipment damage. Okay, that makes sense. Alright, so we're going to learn more about that in section 2. What we're going to do right now, though, is let me make a new page here, and we're getting ready to server form factors. We discovered server form factors, server hardware basics. Okay. We're going to duplicate the slide and okay. I lost my place there on something. It doesn't matter. Okay. Let's see. That's the last one that we had. This is the one we're going to use. We're going to get away from... Let me see here. We're storage, right? So we're still in server hardware basics. Yeah. Oh. Okay. We're not in server hardware basics. We are in storage. Okay. So it's a new section. And pardon me, I'm getting reacquainted with my information. So let's see here. Okay, so we'll just make some notes out of here in our next episode. I'm going to go, I'm going to stop this one right here because we've got enough here, and then I'm going to go rearrange a couple of other notes. We'll come back and we'll start with storage. All right.